mute yourself.
I think I got it. Can you guys hear me okay?
You can.
Okay, fantastic. Well, thank you for that introduction. Thank you all for being here. I love birds, and so I'm here to talk about how to get started bird watching. So is anybody here already an avid bird watcher, birder, interested in birds, anything?
In our yard.
Great. Well, that's a great place to start, and you're going to hear all about that. So with that, here we go. Maybe. There it goes. With that, we're going to talk one bird, two bird, red bird, blue bird. And this program is all about citizen science and how to get started with bird watching. I'm going to talk about the who, what, when, where, and why of bird watching, but not necessarily in that order. So we may be surprised to find out just exactly what it means to be a bird watcher. So based on the dictionary definition of birding, it means the identification and observation of wild birds in their natural habitat as a recreation, bird watching. And if you ask me, that's real boring. That does not describe the hobby at all. Birding is very active and interactive, I would say. And hence the ing on the end of that. It's a verb and it's active. There's around 15 million people in North America who are bird watchers. It is probably one of the #1 hobbies of North America. So birding can bring about a plethora of emotional states. And in this image, we've got someone who is studious, we have someone who is joyful, and we have someone who is excited and thrilled. And you can experience all of those emotions at one time. And birding is always a bit of a surprise. So when you get out there, you never know what you're going to see. And it's always thrilling. And I will say that Nicholas Lund from Audubon magazine writes of birding. It's basically a lifelong scavenger hunt played across the entire earth. It's equal parts science and poetry, hoots of triumph, quiet reflection, adventures to far-flung corners of the world, and discoveries in your own backyard. Your life is going to be better with birds in it. When we start birding, we become a little more aware of the world and our surroundings, and it just becomes richer. So I got little quizzes popped in here, or little games and stuff like that. And so do you think that these birds could be seen in Missouri?
Yes.
Absolutely, yeah. And you may think, well, really, I've never seen anything like that. That's where getting into birding kind of helps, because you got to figure out where and how to see these birds. But essentially what we're looking at is we've got on your left side a vermilion flycatcher. Okay, that guy lives in the desert Southwest. So sometimes they happen to come here in our state. They're what we refer to as a vagrant. Something has happened. A storm has blown him off track and he has shown up here. And then in the middle, we have a Blackburnian warbler. Blackburnian warblers are neotropical migrants. So they spend their winter time in South America, and then they travel through the state of Missouri to get north. They live way far north. That's where they breed in the summertime. And so we call them migrants. Then on the other side, we've got the red-shouldered hawk. And those guys we call residents, and that's because they're here year-round. And you can hear them all the time, and even here in the city, you would be pretty likely to see these guys around. All right, so maybe I've piqued your interest. Maybe you've already been interested in birds. Maybe you like to look at the birds in your backyard. So where to start in 3 easy-ish steps? You can see in this image, there are lots of field guides there. So lots and lots of choice out there for a book to choose in which to identify the birds in your backyard. Selecting a bird guide can be a little bit difficult, but that's step one. Get yourself a field guide. And once you've got that field guide, you're going to want to spend time flipping through it. Any kind of loose time you got, flip through it and get familiar with it and kind of learn the different bird families in there, and maybe pick out a bird that draws you in and read about it. And then see if you can go out and find it. So step one, of course, is the field guide. Understanding that field guide. And then most field guides will have on the inside cover information on how to go about identifying the birds, the different parts of the bird. And what's more important is on that bottom right corner, there's what's called a range map. And you're going to want to check the range map. That's on every page of your field guide. So when we're looking at a page inside of the field guide, this field guide is my favorite field guide. It is the Sibley Guide to Birds. And here we have the eagle page. We have the golden eagle on one side, bald eagle on the other. But essentially the information that gets laid out on these pages would be the bird's name, scientific name, measurements, wingspan, etc. And then it's going to lay out for eagles, it's important to understand the markings, the field markings when they're in flight. That's one of the best ways to be able to ID an eagle. So he's got that laid out. Now, the other thing about this particular image is that eagles have different patterns in their feathers based on different ages. So year 1, 2, and 3, they will look different. By year 4, they've hit maturity, and then they are that classic white head, white tail, dark brown body. So that's all laid out in there in what to look for when you're trying to ID a bird. And then it's got images of them at rest. And then it's going to talk about their habits, habitat, and different key identifiers. And it will also give a description of what their song or sounds are. And then, of course, you can see there's the range map in the bottom of the page. Okay, so we've gone out and we have gotten our field guide and we have flipped through it and we are familiar with it. Now we're out and we're looking at some things and we see this beautiful, fantastic bird. Does anybody have any idea what this bird might be? Good job, you were reading your field guide. It's a scissor-tail flycatcher. So if we didn't know that right offhand, and see, it rubs off on people. So let's just say that we were flipping through that field guide and we didn't quite remember it was scissor-tail, but we remembered it's flycatcher and is behaving like a flycatcher. That's stuff that I read about it. I'm going to flip to that flycatcher section of the book and I'm going to look through the pictures and the descriptions and I'm going to look for something that matches. And in this particular image here in the top left corner, there he is. So we've got him identified. And anytime you are birding, you want to confirm with at least 3 points of some feature to let you know, like, this is really what I am seeing. So you could look for the long split tail, the salmon pink sides, the gray back, and a little bit of a crest if you happen to notice that. Some of these features can be really tough to find, but that's one of those fun challenges of bird watching. So if you like a little bit of a challenge, this might be for you. And then on the range map that I have up on the screen, you can see where the bird is found. That orangey red color, that indicates that's where they're found in the summertime or the breeding time of year for these birds. And as you can see, we can see them here in Missouri. And they get pretty close to our area here. And they certainly have been seen in the area. So an acronym that birders use when they're out in the field to remember how to identify a bird, they use the GIS. the general impression, size, and shape. I like to add T for time because time of year matters. And so I like to say, let's get the gist of the bird. All right, step 2. You're going to need to upgrade your eyeballs. Okay, well, you don't really have to, but it really does help. So if you don't have binoculars, you're going to want to get some binoculars. It's a worthwhile investment. There are many, many choices out there. So that can be tough if you can find a location where they have several different binoculars to look at, try them out before you invest is a good idea. The sizes that I have listed on the screen here are the best sizes for birding. Optics come in lots and lots of different sizes. So for birding, these are the magnifications and the diopters that you're going to want to look at. For older folks, because it can be difficult to hold them steady, 8x32 is good. If you go by 10, 1045, 1042s, the 42 gives you a narrower view down the barrel of your binoculars. So a 32 is going to give you more of a view like this, a 42 more of a view like this, and shaking amplifies with that. So if you're not quite so sturdy, you want to get more of like a 32. Get what you can afford. There's a wide range of binoculars out there, high end, but don't buy bottom of the barrel stuff because you only frustrate yourself and you've killed the hobby. You just won't enjoy it. So get what you can afford at the best that you can. So, okay, what's this little bird? Oh my gosh, we need binoculars. Oh, thank goodness we got them. But anybody know who we got? You're close. Say it again. Chickadee. Chickadee. Black-capped chickadee. Yeah. One of the best little acrobatic birds of the backyard. And they're absolutely happy to nest in your backyard too. So I think you got a handout that will tell you how to encourage them. Okay, so step 2A, there is a wonderful high power optic called a scope that birders use. If you get into like shorebirds or birding out in wide open habitats like prairies and things like that, getting a scope is a good tool to have because it's really going to give you great visual reach, great magnification on those. Again, they can be pretty pricey though, so get what you can afford. This is your hobby. You got to do what makes you happy. And step 2B, hobby inception. Do we have any photographers in the room? No, you might get into it. If you start getting into birding, you might get into bird photography. I certainly did. I would see these fabulous birds and I would just wish, oh, I wish I could get a picture. They're so cool. So you may just get into photography. And of course, it's a whole nother ball of wax that I'm not going to talk about, but you can go overboard. There's always lots of trinkets and gewgaws and tools out there. You just sort of have to experience it and see what works for you. So step 3, grab those kids, grab the family, get out there and do it. You just got to get out there. That's the best part probably of bird watching, is that it gets you going, it gets you interacted and moving. Even if you're just in your backyard, you're still feeling alive and you're looking at life. All right, here's a challenge for you. Anybody know? Ducks, obviously. So in the world of bird watching, there are lots and lots of these kinds of things where, oh my gosh, I know what it is, but I don't know what it is. And how do I know? Well, once you kind of get out there and you start going and you start doing research, and maybe what I always recommend is that you kind of get hooked up with other birders or go to some guided bird walks. And then that's when you're going to start learning some tips and tricks. And so one thing to learn about ducks is they go through a period called eclipse plumage. And that is when the males look like females. So in this image, we have 3 males and 1 female. So now I'm going to advance the slide and then you all tell me what you think the bird is. Anybody? A mallard. Yeah, so those males, this is really, really subtle. In this image, you see 3 ducks that have yellowish bills with sort of chestnut almost on their chest, right below their neck, right? That's kind of how you can tell. And then the female has that orangey beak with the kind of the spot on the top of it and a dark spot at the end. So very subtle, but once you start learning what to look for, you kind of become a pro. So birding has things happening year-round. They are either molting, or they are migrating, or they are building a nest, or they are fighting for their territory. There's always something exciting happening. And right now, the most exciting breeding is happening and chicks are getting ready to fledge from the nest. So in the summertime, you get to watch the parents raise the chicks as they fly around. And it's just fun to see that life and be grounded. Bird watching slows you down and it grounds you. So as I had mentioned earlier, getting in touch with fellow birders, it's a great way to build your own knowledge and start really advancing in the hobby. And these are some of the groups that I highly recommend that you can either check out online or get hooked up with. The Missouri Birding Society. They're a fabulous bunch, and they are primarily out of Columbia, but they do 2 get-togethers each year called they call them meetings because they have chapter meetings, but they also do field trips during these meetings. And during those field trips, you're with some of the most ace birders, and you learn so much in just an afternoon. So getting to know some of these folks is a really, really great idea. And the Cornell Lab of Ornithology is, it's kind of an online resource. So if you can get on there and get hooked up with that, you can learn so much. All right, so far. So the what of birding is bird watching, a hobby for the heart, mind, and soul. And who? Literally everyone. Little kiddos, kids love that stuff. It's fun to be out there and exploring. Even grandma can get out there and do it. She can hang out on the porch and you can enjoy it. Everyone can do it. And how? Do a little research, get a field guide and at least binoculars. But most importantly, be curious and go. And when and where? Literally anytime, anywhere. I am bird watching almost constantly. I'm listening or I'm looking and I'm just keyed into it. So you can do it all the time. And so now the very, very, very important why. Even for the most casual bird watcher, the why really matters. And so I'm going to ask, does anybody know the term citizen science or community science? Have you ever heard of anything like that? No? So essentially, citizen science is the collection and analysis of data relating to natural world by members of the general public. That's us. Typically as part of a collaborative project with a professional scientist. So essentially, a scientist is trying to solve a question or get an answer, and he has recruited or she has recruited the populace. Hey, we know a little something. We can enter data. That's not hard. so we can help out. So they can put out that call to arms, and we can get together and we can do citizen science. And it's easy peasy lemon squeezy. And I'm going to tell you how here in just a minute. So why? Scientists use the data. They reveal how birds are affected by habitat loss, pollution, disease, climate, and other environmental changes. And our participation will help trace bird migration, nesting success, and changes in bird numbers through time. These insights inform conservation plans and key action to protect birds and habitat. So in the end, we're doing a huge service to our ecosystems, to our wildlife by collecting this data, help collect this data, and then in turn, we hopefully preserve something maybe, right? And by protecting one little creature, we protect more because it's like an umbrella effect. And so I'm going to talk about some citizen science projects that are out there that you can very easily get involved with. Some of them cost just a little bit, but most of them are free and easy. All you got to do is travel there and you're ready to go. Some of these projects are months long, some of them are just weeks long or days long or 1 day long. But essentially for us who participate in these things, it's almost always keeping a list and counting and having a good time. So one of my favorite citizen science projects that I participate in just about every year is the Christmas bird count. And just a little backstory on the Christmas bird count. What you're seeing here is what the Christmas bird count originally was all about. People would go out and they would do something called the side hunt. And the goal of the side hunt was to go and kill anything and everything and as much of it as you could. And so whoever killed the most that day won. Scientists became concerned when they started to notice some of these very common birds no longer showing up. And so they said, maybe we should count them rather than kill them. Novel thought. So that's what they did. So since the year 1900, founded by Frank Chapman, who was a self-taught ornithologist, we have been counting birds every Christmas since 1900. So this is a 122, 23-year-old tradition already. So I feel honored every time I participate in it. And so now this is what the Christmas bird count looks like. In most places, kids get out, families get out, social groups get out, and they spend 24 hours in their count circle, and they drive around and they look for as many birds as they can, and they count them, they tally them, and then they report them. And that's all there is to it. And it's a lovely day in the winter when you get the winter blues. It's a great reason to get out and enjoy yourself. And then you're reminded there are little creatures living out here in this cold, glum world, and they're actually doing quite well, and it's quite chipper, honestly. You never know what you're going to find on some of these Christmas bird counts. 2022, they found an eagle from Asia who had actually traversed the United States from the West Coast down to Texas and up to Maine, and that was the Stellar sea eagle. And this is an eagle from Japan and China. So everybody was just abuzz by this fantastic bird. It's sort of like a bald eagle beefed up on steroids. It's a wonderful looking bird. Okay. So next is the Great Backyard Bird Count. Now I'm just going through some of the more popular and easier citizen science things that you can easily get involved with, but there are lots, and there are some that are only available in your community. It's just a matter of getting that information, finding out about it. But the Great Backyard Bird Count started in 1998 And it was one of the first major citizen science projects that utilized the Cornell Lab of Ornithology's eBird, which is an online database. And so you could see results pretty much real time, which is super exciting. They have maps that show count numbers that come in, and you can see the influx of birds in real time moving through the United States. It's really cool to see. Great Backyard Bird Count happens every February, usually the weekend after. Might have to research that. It's either before or after Valentine's Day. Yeah, so this year, okay, yeah, so it's the first weekend after. So this year it was February 16th through the 19th. And the basic rules of the Great Backyard Bird Count is spend 15 minutes on one of these days or all of these days, at least 15 minutes. You could go all day if you wanted to, it's up to you. And then do a little bird watching in your favorite spot, report it, check, you're done. And the reason why they do this particular citizen science count at this time is because they're looking at where birds are just before they start to migrate. So it's really kind of key to see what habitats they're utilizing, where they've moved to, and where they're spending their winter. And then here are the results of the 2023 backyard bird count. You have, what is this? 390,000 eBird checklists that were submitted. 7,538 species of birds identified. Have you ever thought in North America that there could be so many birds, or in the world? There are lots and lots and lots of different birds out there. So
Just trust whoever says they saw it.
So
Is there any way to verify, like?
the statement in question is, do you just trust any report of any bird that is given? And to a degree, yes. You do have data that backs up historically, like, yeah, for instance, I'm reporting a cardinal. Yes, I've seen this cardinal. We know you've seen a cardinal. We see a cardinal every year. Very likely, yes. Now, in the instance of that stellar sea eagle I had brought up earlier, you need to have record. So you need to take photographs and or recordings, or you need other people who can also say, I was there and I saw this. But primarily these days, with the availability of photography, you really need to have a picture. Yeah, so that's a good question. In general, there is a certain amount of trust and faith in your fellow birders that they are reporting truthfully. And if ultimately you have realized I reported wrong, that you go in and correct it. eBird does also have people who check the lists, and if anything is flagged, even when you yourself report it, it will say, do you have a picture of this? Because you're going to need it. And so if you go ahead and submit it anyway, somebody will contact you and say, hey, can you give me more detail about what you saw? So they do have some checks in there, but mostly we're trusting that, yeah, you're doing what you're supposed to. Okay. So basically I already laid this out, but pick your location, spend 15 minutes there or longer, however much you want to do. It's up to you and what makes you happy. Identify your birds, keep your checklist, and report them. Ta-da, you're done. It's so easy. And you had a lovely afternoon. Maybe you took a friend and you hung out and you just had a great time chatting and looking at birds. Perfect. Okay, and then this one is lots and lots of fun for birders. This is almost like the Super Bowl of birding. And this happens the first or second weekend of October. It's called the Big Sit. So you sit in a circle how big is the circle? I think it's like a 7-foot circle. I might find that information here in a minute. Anyway, you cannot move from that circle during this time. So you have a 24-hour window of how long you spend there. You can come and go, but you can only count birds when you're in your count circle. And so people will come and they will tailgate or they will barbecue and they will just have a big gathering. And it's lots of fun. Or they will have competition with neighboring birding clubs or things like this, or make fundraisers out of it, so it's really an event that it can be anything, and it's just a lot of fun. And it was originally created by a New Haven birding club. And the idea of the event was so fun and just caught on that it's just spread worldwide now. So, okay. So you can go to this website listed here, and you can find a count circle near you. I'm not sure about down around Kansas City, but I know that there is a count circle that happens at Swan Lake National Wildlife Refuge. And that's a really cool bunch of birders there. Some really knowledgeable people go to that particular count. And there is also a count circle that happens at Los Bluffs National Wildlife Refuge. So it's fun. You can pop in, spend a few minutes, learn a few things and head on out, or spend the day, however long you're interested. So for the Big Sit people, they do record who all helps with these things. Most of these things are obviously volunteer participation. So they're trying to look at also volunteer hours, and they want to keep those numbers. And they want to know how long you spent birding. Watch, count, record your birds, and report them. That's basically it. Are you getting a theme on this? Yeah, count the birds, look at the birds. It's a count circle of 17 feet. Yeah, okay. So you've got 17 feet to spend 24 hours in. All right, MDC. You all got a bunch of these pamphlets, but MDC is a fabulous resource for pamphlets and handouts and information and things like that. And any of this bird information you can easily find at MDC's websites. So I recommend visiting that. I host bird walks. Check out your state parks for events and programs. I have one more bird walk happening May 27th at 9:30 in the morning. We're going out on West Ridge Trail, and we'll spend about an hour looking at birds, and I will teach people how to do that. I have binoculars for folks who don't, who are still interested in coming out and kind of checking things out. Many folks have found me and have found their retirement hobby. And one such folk is the lovely woman in the front in the blue vest and blue hat. She has become a loyal birder, and she comes to all of my programs now about birds. So I just adore her, and she's great. And so for some resources, there are lots and lots and lots of resources out there. Here's a quick list of resources, lots of online things. As I mentioned, All About Birds is Cornell's kind of broad go-to informational thing about birds. And I highly recommend that website. And then, of course, if you're interested in some of those citizen science programs, Cornell has their citizen science page. So you can hop on there and get all that info. And so with that, I want to say thank you. And if there are any questions, I can answer those for you now. Anything online?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll take a few minutes and see.
For folks online, you can feel free to type your questions in the chat, and we will answer those as well.
I think she is on mute. That old? That must have been.
While we're waiting here, I will mention, I posted it in the chat for those people online, but I will be sending out an email of the slides to everybody. So if you didn't get the resources or that, don't worry, you'll get an email with that.
What's your favorite bird that you've seen or that you've been most excited about?
Oh, what is my favorite bird that I've seen or have been most excited about? There have been many birds that I have been absolutely thrilled to see, but I'd have to say that one of my favorites has been the black-throated blue warbler. As a lovely little warbler, and there are not many blue birds in nature. There's not many blue things in nature, honestly. Blue is a very unusual color in nature. But the blue on this particular bird and a cerulean warbler, they're kind of tough to see too, but phenomenal, beautiful birds. The color is just so pretty. And where did I see it? So interestingly enough, I lived in California for about 15 years, and I saw my very first black-throated blue out in California. That is not where they are supposed to be. They are an East Coast bird, and they will migrate through the Boot Heel and like parts of the Ozarks here in Missouri, but they don't go much further west than that. So it was on top of that moment of, oh my gosh, I'm seeing this East Coast bird on the West Coast. And then also, it was a lifer for me. So in birding terminology, when you see a bird for the first time, we call it a lifer, which we keep a list of all the birds that we see and what time and when and blah, blah, blah. And so it was a lifer for me. And the simple fact that it was a vagrant bird, I was just like, oh my gosh. So that was really thrilling. But the cerulean warbler, I saw down south close to Greer Springs. Are you familiar with? That's down in the Ozark area. Stunning area. If you get the chance to go south to like the Springs area, Big Springs, Alley Springs, Greer Springs, so pretty. And the springs are just lovely too.
We've got a question online.
Mhm.
Do grackles serve some purpose?
Yeah. That is really funny. And, unfortunately, grackles are just, they're bully birds. I can't really say that they do serve any kind of real special purpose other than maybe they're a food source for like other predators or something like that. But yeah, if you bring in the food and kind of keep that food source away from them a few days, they might kind of go away, and then you can set it back out and your regulars will come back. So give that a try and see if that helps.
I've had cowbird come to my feeder,
Hmm.
and I've been reading about that.
Mm-hmm.
You're not supposed to bother them or their eggs or anything. That's what I read.
A cowbird? Okay, so she has said that she's had a cowbird come to her feeder and read something about you're not supposed to bother them. Cowbirds are what's called a nest parasite bird. So they actually lay their eggs in other bird nests, and they let other birds raise their young for them. Cowbirds also don't typically visit feeders, so it may be popping in to check things out. Maybe your seed is full of mealworms or something like this. That's a possibility, but they may be coming to just kind of check it out. Birds are curious and sometimes will poke around and see if they can find a new food source or like that. So it shouldn't be hanging around your feeder for too much longer, honestly. But outside of that, you know, they're kind of in line with grackles. You know, they make life hard for our natives. Yeah.
And I just saw a rose-breasted
Grosbeak.
grosbeak
Mhm.
at my feeder. Yes, actually, he saw it first yesterday and
Yeah.
and it came back again today.
It's thrilling. Yeah. They're beautiful. Yes. Start your life list right now. Yeah, that is thrilling. And they're truly beautiful, beautiful birds. And they have a lovely song too. Yeah. Yeah. Well, you can look it up online. Visit allaboutbirds.com and or .org, and you can click on it and find out all about it. Is
You recommend for people?
I'm taking the online. People heard you say that. Okay, yeah. So there is certainly an app. There are lots of apps out there actually, and that can also be tough to kind of shop through and figure out. But an app, again, put out by Cornell Lab of Ornithology, is Merlin. And Merlin is a great app that will do sound ID or visual ID. And you can go into it, you can start recording all around, and it'll pick up birdsong and it'll tell you this is what is singing. And it will display a little picture of the bird, and that will light up when the bird sings, so you can start to learn some of the songs. A lot of birding, which can be frustrating for some folks, is actually done by ear, especially when we're very forested. So when things are leafed out, it's very challenging to see some of these birds. So ear, that's usually what gives them up when they're out there, is when you hear them, and then you can start to kind of pinpoint where they are, and then you can get binoculars on them. Yeah, but and then also that Merlin app. So if you get a visual on it, but you don't hear it, and you remember your visual details, you can type in, I'm in this area, it looked like this, it was about this size. Now it's not always 100%, but it can kind of get you in a direction. And then you can go to your field guide and then kind of flip through that. Yeah.
I always hear birds, you know. Is it?
Yeah, it's really cool. I can show you my Merlin app. So it records and then it will save it on your phone, and you can, I could play some recordings that I've got. It's actually really fantastic. It's a lot of fun.
Any last questions from the folks online?
This is kind of a weird question, but we was out at Powell Gardens.
Uh-huh.
Walking around, and there was a bird kind of acting like it was hurt.
Uh-huh.
And then we looked around and there was a female nest on the ground. And I heard, I don't know what the name of the bird is, but the male does that to get you away from the nest.
Yes.
My question is, have you ever studied why a bird makes a nest on the ground like that when it's in a tree?
You know, I'm sure that they have studied it, and there are lots of birds that nest in what's called a scrape. So this particular bird, I'm presuming, was a killdeer, and when their chicks are born, they are what is called precocial. So they have feathers, they have downy. They're ready to go. They're ready to rock and roll. So they need a few minutes to dry off once they've hatched, and then mom and dad say, water this way, let's go. And they get rocking and rolling. Because they're a shorebird and their habitat is water, but you can't have a nest on the water, obviously. And so they're not birds that really perch per se. So they don't build tree nests. And so what makes the most sense for them is to build a nest on the ground, and they don't collect sticks, they just use the rocks. And You know, I don't really know if maybe there is a kind of science behind that, if they're using the warmth off those rocks to keep the eggs nice and warm. During the day and the heat of the day, the parents do leave the nest because it's too hot and they need shelter, but the eggs seem to do fine. So, yeah, there's a lot of interesting nest styles and habitat or habits that birds nest in. So like peregrine falcons, for instance, we're seeing a return of them in big cities because that mimics their natural sort of nesting habitat and stuff like that, as they nest on cliffs. And they also just make a scrape, but their egg shape is such that if it rolls, it just kind of rolls in a circle. So it won't roll straight off the cliff. So that's another evolutionary kind of wow sort of thing. So many strange adaptations that birds have. And why just right there on the ground? I don't exactly know.
Is it common to see eagles like in a city?
Not really. I mean, they will certainly pass through. It seems like hawks definitely are comfortable with city life. There are some falcons that are comfortable, like the peregrine, and turkey vultures are more than happy to pass over, you know.
I saw what I'm pretty sure was a bald eagle
Mhm.
in Lenexa
Sure, yeah.
weekends ago.
Yeah, it was
We have
there.
some around here that like live here, like at Blue Springs Lake.
Like,
Absolutely.
about the lake, but
So yeah, that was my next question to you is there a body of water nearby?
no.
So in the winter, we get an influx of bald eagles because they're all kind of coming from the harsh habitats of the north for the winter time. And yeah, you know, if there's water around or whatever, fish available, they'll come, they'll hang out in the city if there's like a park area that's kind of big enough for them, whatever's comfortable. But yeah, they'll show up here. Same kind of happens with snowy owls. They'll sometimes explode from the north because there's not enough food, but they pick very strange places that for some reason they like. Lots of times like the airport or highway strips. So go figure, but they're finding what they want there. So yeah, I wouldn't put any kind of hard and fast boundary on anything. Sure, you can see eagles in town, not too common. I mean, they fly, so they go wherever they want.
I was surprised because
Yeah.
when I've seen them, it's always been like
Mhm.
along the Mississippi or Missouri or
Oh,
you
okay.
know, pretty sizable lake.
Yeah, right. Yeah, well, and you know, they're on their way somewhere too all the time. They're always moving, so could be heading somewhere, right? You can see them anywhere. That goes back to that, never know what you're gonna see. Yeah.
Yeah, certainly not what I expected to see fly in front of my car as I was driving down the road.
I forget where I was, in a town somewhere, but there was a creek. I saw a belted kingfisher kind of head out and fly off, and I was like, oh wow, it's totally unusual right now. But you know, it's still sort of migration time, and it could be a young bird that's trying to find its own territory. So it's just exploring. Can I survive here? Can I get what I need? Or it's just resting for a minute and then it's going to head on. So, which might happen with your grosbeak. Let's hope not. Yeah. Yeah. Enjoy him while he's there.
Other question.
Yeah.
Every once in a while, we'll see a crane and
Mhm.
we're walking.
Mhm.
Are they usually kind of loners or do they tend to flock? Or
Yeah, so you're actually seeing a great blue heron. So the question was, they're out walking and they oftentimes see a crane and it's alone. Is that typical? So it's here in town, probably along a creek or a river, I'm assuming, or some sort of water. is nearby. That's a great blue heron you're seeing. And they do, during the day, kind of hang out solitary. Now, if say like there are many birds around and there's a lot of food and there's a field or something, you might see them kind of popped around, but they're not necessarily hanging out in a social group. They do nest in social groups though. So if you find a heron rookery, there will be lots of them. And it's funny because they do nest in a tree. And it's so awkward because they're so long-legged. Yeah, yeah. And Cornell Lab of Ornithology has bird cams, and they have a bird cam on a great blue heron nest. So you can go in and find that and watch it. And it's just really, it's kind of bizarre and surreal, but entertaining to see. Yeah. Yeah.
All right, well, thank you, Amy, for a great program this evening. And
Thank you.
everybody for coming. If you haven't already, there's all kinds of things you can pick up on the tables for those of you here in the room. And again, I'll mention, if you haven't gotten one of our summer program guides for June through August, those are now out with the latest programs. And those programs are all available for registration on our website. Some of you were talking about your yards. We do have a program coming up this summer on July 27th online on Zoom with our friends at Borough Woods. They're going to be talking about how you can create habitats in your yard for birds and butterflies. The types of plants and things that you can plant, or what to do or not do with your landscaping so that you can get those. So we hope you'll join us for future programs, and if you can fill out the survey and let us know how you did, that's great as well. And I will send that email to everybody with the slides from this evening. Thank you and have a great evening.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.